so much for being here today to remember Jeff and to support Michelle. And it's great to have this kind of turnout. And I appreciate your patience as we've waited. I've tried to watch the line, and every time I think I see the end of the line, then somebody else shows up. So thank you for waiting so patiently. In just a minute, Chris is going to come up and get us started.
Today we gather to remember and celebrate the life of Jeffrey Ingram, who passed away early Tuesday morning, February 4th, 2025 in Tyler, Texas. Born on July 9th, 1974 in Greenville, Texas, Jeffrey was the cherished son of David and Janet Ingram. He grew up in a loving family that instilled in him the values of hard work and dedication. On September 15th, 1995, he married the love of his life, Michelle Posey, in Mount Vernon, Texas. Together they shared a beautiful journey filled with love and companionship. Jeffrey's career began in 1992 at Brookshire's Grocery Company, where he devoted over 3 decades of his life. He started as a grocery sacker and quickly demonstrated his commitment and talent, advancing to various roles within the company. From stocker to assistant produce manager and ultimately becoming the produce manager, Jeffrey's work ethic was unmatched. In 2021, he took on new challenges as an inventory control analyst in the corporate office, showcasing his adaptability and growth. Sorry, I can't talk today. Jeffrey's legacy is one of perseverance and passion. He was preceded in death by his beloved paternal grandparents, Coy Lee and Lunell Ingram, and his maternal grandparents, George and Bobby Stone. He is lovingly remembered by his devoted wife, Michelle Ingram, his parents, David and Janet Ingram, his siblings, Chris and his wife, Jamie, Dawn and her husband, Eric, Jennifer and her husband, Caleb, and his brother, Stephen. He also leaves behind his Uncle Ben, Aunt Corliss, and Uncle Randy, and his husband, Bud. Additionally, he is survived by 9 cherished nephews, 2 great-nephews, and a host of cousins who will always hold his memory close to their hearts. Today we honor Jeff, a devoted husband, hardworking employee, and a beloved friend. May we remember him with fondness and carry his spirit forward in our lives. Sorry, I forgot the last part there. Since I'm up here, I have a few things to share. See if we'll make it through it. So I've been going back and forth for the last few weeks, see if I wanted to say anything at my brother's memorial. The only thing that I could keep coming back to was that the type of person my brother was and what he meant to me. He wore so many hats for so many people that just me saying a few lines about him doesn't seem to do him justice. He was an amazing husband. He was a co-worker to so many. He was a son, a nephew, a grandson, a brother, a cousin, an uncle, and just so many other things to so many other people. But to me, he was my big brother, the person who I would go to for advice, talk to about sports, kids, work, just life in general. I will miss our conversations. Sorry. That's all I can do. Thank you.
Thank you, Chris. I just can't imagine. My brother's still living, so. You've been sitting for a few minutes, waiting patiently, and I appreciate that. If you're a family member, immediate or in-law or related somehow, would you stand up and remain standing? And if you were a coworker at Brookshire's or any of the other stores that Jeff worked at, would you stand up and remain standing? All right, and I'm assuming the rest of us are friends, right? All right, friends, would you stand up and remain standing? And we are going to go to the Lord in prayer. Father, we have to confess today that we just don't understand. It just doesn't seem right. And yet, your word tells us that your ways are higher than our ways, and your thoughts are higher than our thoughts. So because we trust you as our Lord and Savior, because we trust you in our daily lives, Father, we're going to try to trust you to get us through this and saying goodbye to Jeff. Today, give us hope. Give us strength. Give us a clear vision of how you want us to proceed from this day forward. And we ask that in Jesus' name and for his glory. Amen. You may be seated. Thank you so much. Hopefully you can already tell I'm not real formal. I should have recognized another group. I won't have you stand, but if you met me at a Boo Bash, I also want to say thank you for being here. And for those who don't know, that probably wasn't one of my finest moments, but didn't we have fun? So it's about 15 years ago that Donna and I met Jeff and Michelle at Buffalo Wild Wings in Cedar Hill. She was a librarian there. And I sang karaoke that night, and she sang karaoke, and I went over and introduced myself to Jeff, and I said, "Is it okay if I talk with your wife, Michelle?" He said, "I'm fine with it if she is." We had no idea what good friends we were going to become, did we, Michelle? So thank God for those people who come into our lives that way. And so you're going to have a chance to share your part of Jeff and Michelle's story and their part in your life. And that's what the microphone down front here is for when we get to that part. Right now, I want to invite Jerron Henderson to come up and sing for us. And then after he sings, I'll come back up and read some scripture and share a few things and then open it up for you. So if you don't already know what you were going to share, you get prepared because it's going to be your turn in just a few minutes. Come ahead, Jerron.
All right. I first want to give honor to God, who is my personal Savior and Lord of my life. This is kind of hard for me because I was so close to Jeff and Michelle. Down through the years, I lived with them. They invited me into their home when I moved back to Tyler. And during not COVID, but Katrina, when all the Louisiana people came to Houston, I moved to Houston, and they put all the teachers on a waiting list, and I called Michelle, and I was like, Michelle, I got to come back to Tyler because there's no teaching jobs down here. And she's like, Jerron, come on back. You know I want you back anyway. So I came back, and I stayed with them for a year until, the whole Katrina thing was over, and I went back to Houston. But even after that, and even before that, when I first met Michelle, I can remember, she had a math class, and they hired me to relieve her because she had too many students or whatever. And when she first saw me, she was like, oh, my God, I love you. And I go, what? And then come to realize she loved me because she gave me all her rejects, right? But nevertheless, Michelle and I, we were co-workers and math teachers at Dogan Middle School, Club Dogon. And the memories, you can't even imagine. You wouldn't believe me if I told you some of the stories that we shared. But Jeff would let Michelle and I go out every night, especially on Thursdays. Well, not every night, but at least once a week. And stay out all night. And Jeff wouldn't say a word, Just Jeff. I don't think there will ever be a human being created or born that is cut from the cloth of Jeffrey Ingram. He was the most kindest, the most sweetest, the most gentle man that I've ever met. And I just put that on everything that he is. It's just not fair, Life is not fair. But when I look back on it, all the good ones God takes first, It's like the world doesn't deserve a person like Jeff. And one of the funny stories before I sing, we would play dominoes, That was one of Jeff's favorite pastimes, that we played dominoes. And it was just so funny to hear Jeff say the little lingos like, fire downtown, or fish, no bread, tension, And, oh, Lord, when he would score 20, Bobo. And I would just laugh and laugh and laugh. And before he left for one of the Boo Bashes, we were trying to get together, but it never happened. I love to cook, and I was supposed to smother him some pork chops because he loved my smothered pork chops. But, if y'all guys come over, I'm going to smother some pork chops this weekend if you like smothered pork chops. Okay, here it goes. Precious Lord, take my hand, lead me on, let me stand. I am tired, I am weak, I am worn through the storm and through the night. Lead me on through the light. Take my hand, precious Lord, and lead me home on a hill far away. Stood an old rugged cross, the emblem of suffering and shame. But I love that old cross where the dearest and best in a world of lost sinners were slain. So I'll cherish the old rugged cross till my trophies at last I lay down. I will cling to the old rugged cross and exchange it someday for a crown. I shall wear a crown. I shall wear a crown when it's all over. Yeah, yeah. When it's all over, I shall see his face. I shall see his face. When it's all over, yeah, yeah. I said when it's all over, I shall die no more. I shall die no more. When it's all over, yeah, yeah. I said when it's all over, listen, I'm going to put on my robe and tell the story how I made it over. One of these days it's gonna be, yeah, put on my robe and tell the story how I made it over. Sooner we'll be done with the troubles of this world. I said the troubles of this world. The troubles of this world. Sooner we'll be done with the troubles of this old world. I'm going home to live with my God.
The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He makes me to lie down in green pastures. He leads me beside the still waters. He restores my soul. He leads me in the paths of righteousness for his name's sake. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for you are with me. Your rod and your staff, they comfort me. You prepare a table before me in the presence of my enemies. You anoint my head with oil. My cup runs over. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I will dwell in the house of the Lord forever. Thanks to Jeff's example, I'll never read that psalm the same way again. And before I tear up, let me just say that tears are okay today. We've lost a great friend. Laughter's okay, because Jeff had a great sense of humor. He loved to laugh. He loved to make us laugh. So laughter's okay. Applause, as we just did, is fine. Celebrating, shouts of joy, whatever you feel, whatever you think will honor Jeff is okay today. It's all fair game. And I know Michelle is so thankful for each of you being here, but let me get back to the psalm. I'll never read that psalm the same way again. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death. And it was just about the time that Jeff was diagnosed with the tonsil cancer that Donna and I had moved to Minnesota. So if I shed this jacket, it's because it was a little colder in Minnesota when we left than it is here today, believe it or not. But 3.5 years that Jeff walked through this cancer and this thing that just drug him down and finally did him in. But, man, what a spirit. What does it say? Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil. For you are with me. Your rod and your staff, they comfort me. Jeff had a strength I just don't understand. I think, and I know many of you would agree with me, he knew he had to be strong despite the fact that he was the one who was sick. He had to be strong for Michelle. And that's how much he loved her. And she loved him. And they took care of each other. Jerron, I have a similar experience. Jeff let Michelle and I go on these crazy train rides. And yeah, and then he and Donna would pick us up at the end of the night and take us home and pour us into bed. And then a few months later, we were ready to do it again. But Jeff's just always so gracious. We have a photograph hanging on our wall that Jeff took of a lighthouse in Massachusetts, I believe it is. And then on my phone, I have a picture that he took when he got to tour the Ranger Stadium one time. And he got a picture of the batting helmets in the rack that they sat at. And once upon a time, I wrote a poem, and that poem is still on my phone at the bottom of Browner Lake. So I'm sorry I can't read that to you this morning, but Jeff did get to see the poem before I lost it. So, all right, who's ready? I know my family is eager to get up here and share some of their experiences with Jeff and Michelle. I have a couple of things to read from people who were not able to be here today. And if you get up here and tear up as Chris did, I mean, Chris, who can blame you, man? It's fine. It's fine to shed a tear and then go on when you're ready and to share some laughs with us. So whoever's ready, whoever's the boldest, come on. We want to hear from you first. Here we come. I see some movement back there. Come on down. I believe this is either Daryl or my other brother, Daryl. I'm not sure.
So I met Jeff and Michelle through school a long time ago. There's not many high school football games in Gladewater that I miss. You know, I pretty much at every one of them, and I met Shell before she went up in the booth and all. And there's actually a picture that was taken of me, Jeff, and Michelle. Was sitting at one of the football games, and it went in the paper, and we was all sitting there laughing. I have no idea what we were laughing about, but I'm sure it's something Jeff said and made us all laugh. So wasn't long after that, I started going with the teachers and stuff when they had their yearly things and everything. I would go with them and stuff and hang out, and we'd always be there and eat and stuff. We always went to somewhere else, different places. And then fantasy football came along. I found out that I like fantasy football. So kind of got into that. About 4 years in a row, lost the first or second pick that I got. I could not get over the hump. Let me tell y'all something about this football league that we are in. You better get up at 4 o'clock in the morning and start researching people if you're going to try to get one of them, because Jeff and them other guys, they are on it. They were on it every day. You couldn't hardly, man, I'll tell you, every time I'd go to draft somebody, they'd already be on it. I was like, man, these guys just stay up. I think they stay up all night long. They got notifications on their phones or something. But, you know, Michelle, I messaged her the other day, and she asked me how I got through it, because I have lost a lot of people in my life since December. I've lost my son, which was 22, my dad, which was 74, probably less than a month apart. And I told her this, that, you know, you have to trust in God to get through this. So to the family, 2 things I'll leave with you. And I'll leave you with this, is to be absent from the body is to be present with the Lord. The other thing that I'll leave you with is he will never leave you nor forsake you. And I'll stay on that one thing just to get me through, because I know that he's always with me, no matter whether you're sad or you're happy or what. And I'll leave you with this. Go Wolverines. Go Cowboys.
Come ahead and introduce yourself to those of us who don't know.
Okay. My name is Larry Irwin, and I knew Jeff through Michelle, and we worked at Dogan. So if I may, would all the people from Dogan please stand? And we had a wonderful time at Dogan, and I attended a boo bash. A number of boo bashes to speak of, and Jeff was, like they said, one of the kindest people you'd ever want to meet. And he welcomed me into his home like he had known me all of his life. And most of you all, family especially, are going to miss Jeff. And I'm going to miss him from the times that I've met him. But I just wanted to say something on behalf of the people at Dogan, myself, and to Michelle, that I know you're going to miss him, but we're all going to miss him. And to the gentleman that just spoke to me, spoke to you all, I just want to say, I'm a Steeler fan. Curtain.
Gonna try to do this without crying. I've known Jeff and Michelle for, gosh, well over 20 years. And he was such a bright light, and never ever saw him not smiling. He was just the most wonderful person. Except for the fact that he liked Cowboys. I don't know about that. So he was a very close friend. They were very close friends. I'm gonna miss him very much.
So I've probably known Jeff less than anybody in here, but I met him through my fiance Amber. And I just remember one of the first things he said, "You want to come check out my Star Wars figures?"
Which he would threaten your life if you opened.
Yeah, but I knew when he asked me that we could instantly be friends. And then just, the times that we can nerd out together and talk about all that stuff, it was awesome. I'm gonna miss him.
Good evening. My name is Lynn Reddick. I've been knowing Michelle since she came to Dogan, and we have been friends ever since then. She knew my entire family, and I met Jeff through her. As they say, Jeff was the kindest person you've ever seen. And you talk about, he cared for Michelle. Oh, Michelle, Jeff was kind of a person, now he was firm. Because I remember we was going somewhere, she wanted to go somewhere. And his words were, "If Lynn can't go, you won't be going." And of course, Michelle, "Lynn, can you go with me?" And I did. But I will, I did. I had a point, I said, "Okay, Michelle, let's go. But again, about Jeff, he was a loving person. It floored me when Michelle told me that, and I just didn't know what to do. And I told the first thing I thought about, I told my husband, I said, "Michelle, I don't like to stay at home by herself." And I made sure that I came over to see her that next day after I found out. Because even now, just looking at his picture, I remember Jeff so. Like I said, he was the kindest man that you could meet. He was a very kind man. But like I said, I know Michelle's going to miss him. But as you say, God is with you, and we know he would take care of you and his family. You know, he's there for everyone. Thank you.
All right, good afternoon. Good afternoon. All right. I'm Derek from Gladewater, and if you're from Gladewater, I have to kind of start over. So, good afternoon. I'm from Gladewater. And we have this thing at Gladewater in our school district because I work with Michelle, and we got a support chair. So I need a support chair. Come on up. All right, everything, and I know people keep saying Jeff, people keep saying Michelle, Jeff, Michelle. Well, I don't really know them by that. I know them by Michelle and Jeff and Michelle, because they were always each other's biggest supporter. The common ground that they brought people together by, I believe, was just having fun. So that's why I need to see some smiles on y'all's faces right now, because if you got some of the same thoughts with the Boo Bash and some other activities, that should put a smile on your face. Jeff and Michelle and Jeff did every single thing really, really, really big, from the Star Wars collections to the, what's those things that, the what is it? The pops, the Boo Bash, and the other gatherings too. So when I think about things, they support each other big. We need to support her big. They saw the fun in people. One last thing about it right here, he kept supporting her even in the days afterwards. About one small little story that she told me about the passwords in the phone. Y'all know she's an IT person. Jeff, get rid of those passwords. It's hackers. It's all of that stuff. You've probably heard it from other IT people. But when she went through his phone, guess what you found? The password. So even today, he is still supporting. And I want you to know, from Gladewater, from me, Derek Floyd, we will support you in anything that you need. So we're just a phone call away. Thank you.
My name is John Klein. I am Leanne Klein's husband. Leanne is the first cousin of Jeff, so we've known him all his life. The past 4 or 5 years, though, Jeff and I have become closer because of this disease. I was there to help take him to treatments. We would go over to Dallas and spend the night at his grandmother's house, and we'd call it our guys' night. It was kind of like a couple of kids on a sleepover. We'd stay up late talking about a little of everything and a little of nothing. And most of the time, we just talked about everything besides the disease. We'd talk about life, family, my kid, just everything. Most of the time, we would end up talking about his comic book collection. I knew nothing about comic books, still don't. He was the biggest nerd I knew. And I loved him for it. I don't know if you knew or not, but he would most every time make me stop by a comic book store, at least one on the way home. If you've ever seen Big Bang Theory, that's kind of what I felt like. We were digging through the comic books. Out of all the things we talked about, though, the one that y'all have said it right to the T. He has never had a bad day. That man always had a smile on his face, no matter what was going on with him at that moment. He'd find out his tumor wasn't shrinking or his medicine wasn't working. He'd say, just another hurdle God's got me to jump through. And that's the way he was all the time. I never, ever saw him talk bad about anybody, speak bad about anybody. Chris said it best a while ago, is we just don't know. We don't understand. It doesn't make sense why this is going on and why it's happening to somebody so good. One of the things, though, that I'm the most proud of is one of our conversations led to his faith one night. I always thought he was a believer. I just didn't know. And our conversation kind of came to a serious moment. And before I could ever get it out, he was like, yes, I know Jesus died on the cross for my sins. And I know that God can heal me of this. And I know that Jeff is looking down right now and watching you, Michelle. And we love you. Thank you.
My name's Doug Duke. I didn't know for several years that I had a red-headed stepchild. But I do, and I love her. I would just like to fry some crappie fillets for Jeff one more time. He and Michelle have become real family friends. And we moved to Texas in 1979, left all of our main friends in Louisiana, but we made some good ones over here, and none better than Jeff and Michelle. Thank you.
Can I introduce you? Go ahead. One of my three pride and joys is my son, Shay.
Now, I don't think it was very long after my parents met Jeff and Michelle that they started to come over to my parents' house for game days, our game day parties. They started playing Pick'em League is what they called it, I think, before fantasy football even became a big thing. Was it already or no? I can't remember. Either way, so I met Jeff at 12 or 13, somewhere around that age, and I'm actually really glad that he was there in my life at that time because, I mean, like it's been said before, he was very kind, but he was intelligent, he was honest, and I could tell even at that age, at least one of his highest priorities, if not the highest one, was taking good care of his wife and his family and friends around him. He was such a positive role model for me. I wish he was still here so I could continue to learn more from him about how to live my own life. Thank you.
No one from Brookshire's has got up here yet, so here I am. I was hoping somebody might beat me up here so I didn't have to get up here and talk, but I think when you value somebody as much as I value Jeff, it's important to tell how you feel. And Chris, I never knew you before today, but I think you and I would be really good friends because we have a lot in common with Jeff being a big brother to us. When I started with Brookshire's, it was 1999 in Winsboro, and I saw Jeff working over in the produce department. I didn't know who he was. And a few days later, I saw him talking to who I knew as Miss Ingram at the middle school then. And so I asked somebody, and they said, yeah, that's Jeff's wife. And the only memory I had of Michelle was her yelling at kids in the hallway to get it back in the classroom. That's the only part I remember. I didn't have Michelle for class. My wife actually did a few years later, but I just remember that if you were not in the classroom you were supposed to be, Michelle Ingram would very quickly and loudly let you know that you weren't where you were supposed to be. But my memories of Jeff are he invited me to come back and work in the produce department with him, and quickly became a big brother to me, like he did his younger siblings. Jeff transferred to Lindale, and after I graduated high school, there was an opening, and he asked me to come work with him in Lindale, and I jumped at the opportunity to work with somebody like that. He trained me to be the manager that I'm still with Brookshire's 26 years later. I've never known Brookshire Grocery Company without Jeff. When I got married, who was at my wedding but Jeff and Michelle? Not long after we got married, I got asked to transfer to Athens, and who went to Athens with us but Jeff and Michelle to tour the store and look at it and all those things. But the best part about Jeff was I was laying in bed this week, and I knew this weekend was coming up. And like a lot of you, it's a finality. My friend Jeff is gone. And I thought to myself, the best part about Jeff is I'll never forget 2009. I found out I was having a son. One of the first people I call is Jeff. The first thing he said, we got to take him to a Ranger game. And so who went to the first Ranger game with my son and I? Jeff. Who called me when he had playoff tickets to the Ranger game? Jeff. So my son and I could go with him. When people care about your family as much as you care about them, that's what a true friend is. And that's how I view Jeff. Every football, basketball season, baseball season, all Jeff wanted to know was, how's your son, how's Landry doing? When it was 100 degrees outside and my son, he was playing t-ball, we made it to the state tournament in t-ball. But who was there? Jeff. Everything. I've never been married. Never been married without Jeff in my life. Never had kids without Jeff in my life. Like Chris said, when you needed somebody for advice, he was the person to call. So, even though Jeff's not here anymore and we'll miss him, he'll always be with me and my family. Thank you.
Wasn't sure if I was going to be able to do this today or not, but I'm Scott Player. I worked with Jeffrey for many, many years in different capacities. The last few years, I've been lucky enough to work in the office with him there at Brookshire's, and we'd be remiss if we didn't talk about his career at Brookshire's. He was such an integral part of the company for so many years, for 30-something years. We talk about Jeffrey and his big smile and his work ethic, and that was just obvious in the way he approached his job every day, and he impacted so many of us. But just the customers, hundreds of thousands of customers over 30-something years, and they all saw the same Jeff we did, that big smile. And he was such a big part of, again, of our lives, but of Brookshire Grocery Company. And again, we'd be remiss if we didn't talk about that, and I'd be remiss if I didn't talk about Jeff and how much he made us laugh and how he kept us all motivated and inspired over the last several years, especially. When Jeff first got sick, he came and told me that, he had cancer on his tonsil, and, God's got this. We're gonna be okay. We're gonna work through this, and we did. But funny story, so I've got a little glass fishbowl office, and then right around the corner from behind us, most of our team works together there. They have cubicles, and for those of you that don't know John Dean, Jeffrey answered to him for years in the stores, and I did as well. And John and Jeffrey and I, mostly John and Jeffrey, jabs at each other constantly. And if you know John, you would understand. But John sits with his back to the corner. He can't see real well. And Jeffrey could kind of see as me or anybody else came around the corner. So when John was talking about me, of course, they had to come up with an alarm signal. And Jeffrey, so it just came up with this, caw-caw, caw-caw. And you all laugh because you can see Jeff doing that, right? So anyway, it's just hilarious as I'd come around the corner and you'd hear that caw-caw, caw-caw, and I see John smiling over there now because you know he was talking about me. But Jeff was just such an inspiration to all of us. And Michelle, thank you for sharing him with us. We won't forget him. He is always going to be an inspiration to all of us. But I'll leave you with this. When we first found out that he had cancer, and multiple times over the last 3 years, Jeff's been in my office, and he would give me an update. Well, I'm going to have another treatment, or we're trying a new drug, or whatever it would be. And every few weeks, we would have this conversation. I'd say, you okay? Is there anything I can do to help, anything I can take off of you? And we'd put on, nope, God's got this, and I'm going to be okay. That's what he told me, and we had that conversation multiple times. And my mom told me years ago, where I was going through some things with my child, that God doesn't make mistakes, and he doesn't. And so what Jeff went through, and just to look out on this crowd and these faces, the people that have been impacted by Jeffrey's life, it's just amazing. And that in itself is God's plan. It's something I will keep with me forever. And again, knowing where Jeffrey is today, he's not hurting, he's not fighting this, and he's in a much better place than we are. And we're grateful for having known him and being able to spend time with him. So thank you again.
All right, well, good afternoon. My name is Brian. I'm a cousin of Jeff. Our pathways kind of split early in life, and I knew him when he was really young. The only reason I can stand and talk today is because the statute of limitations has ran out on this story. And as a dad, you're probably going, wait a minute. But you were part of this story. You may not remember. So I grew up in Yanis. I ended up moving out of the state of Texas where I grew up. Go Cowboys. We can discuss it afterwards if we need to. But with Jeff, I've heard a lot today about kindness, character, integrity. But this is a story about statute of limitations. And so we need to discuss this a little bit. When we were young, I grew up on a farm, 100 acres out in Yanis on Lake Fork. Jeff would always come and visit family, had a good time. Well, one day, story was, we needed to be home at a certain time for lunch, and we decided to play hide and seek. And we were hiding on the welding shop when Grandpa decided to say, come looking for us, and they could not find us. And we did not say where we were, but we may have watched you run to a pond on the property where you thought maybe we had gone, and we were giggling on the barn. There are repercussions for that, though, however. And I grew up with Jeff in a different time when he was young, when we grew up together. He is a good man. He's a good husband. There's no doubt about that. The statute of limitations I can talk about because we may or may not have broken in to the high school gym to play basketball. I know many of you probably were like, Jeff, statute of limitations? You're like, this cannot be. But that was about the cause of his nefariousness, is that he loves sports. Everybody knows that. And I'm just going to leave you with this. His most cherished memory, I know this because he shared it all the time, was the time that all of you went to the state basketball tournament every year as a family. He shared that. He shared that a lot. I know that is a memory that you as a family will take with you on. So it's not easy. Death is not easy. It's not hard. It's very difficult at times. But I've heard all of you talk about, and there's no denying, that God will see us through these tough times. The one thing that we all have to have is we all have to have faith. We have to have faith in Christ, and that gets us through. And it sounds like that got that. I was not here during Jeff's time in cancer. A lot of people don't realize we shared the same business philosophy because he was in customer service. So was I. He just went with Brookshire's. My customer service took me into law enforcement. So we had customer service, just a little bit different outcome. How's that? So Dave and Janet, I know you guys are going to miss Jeff, but I do agree. God has him. He's no longer in pain. So thank you all for coming today. It was great to hear all those memories. When we were close when we grew up, but just, our pathways took a different turn. He lived on the farm for a couple years after I graduated high school before I went down my career and profession one way. And yeah, we fished, we hunted, there's probably not a place on that farm that doesn't have a footprint of both of us. And all of you too, for sure. So yeah, love him. He's a good man, and thank you all for turning out. Appreciate it.
This is my oldest pride and joy, Megan.
I just want to say thank you to Jeff's family for letting him become an honorary member of all the families that are in this room. My experience and story is no different than what everybody said. I am so thankful for Buffalo Wild Wings and slow Sunday nights. I served every Sunday night at the Buffalo Wild Wings in Cedar Hill to pay my way through college. And one Sunday night, Jeff and Michelle strolled in and sat down at this small table. And every Sunday night for about 2 years, we spent together playing games, laughing, talking sports, Jeff drinking water, Michelle not drinking water. And when I told Jeff and Michelle, I was like, you just really need to come and meet my family. They both were like, that's weird. But they have become such a members of our Pettit family. And I don't know what I would have done without you guys for the last 16 years. So losing Jeff is big. It's big to lose him. My skip-bo partner for life. Great. Thank you.
I'm not trying to bring us to a close. Yeah, come ahead. Okay, he's headed the other way. That happens too. I'm going to read one of the letters from Jeff's cousin Mike. And I saw how long it was, and I asked Michelle, I said, can I read through it and edit it if I think it needs it? And she said, sure, it doesn't need editing. Jeff was an amazing cousin and great friend. Jeff, Don, Chris, John, and I were sort of a unit when we were together as children, usually at Grandma's house in Pleasant Grove, and occasionally when we visited Janet and David's house or went to family reunions in Oklahoma. We would play basketball, ping pong, or Monopoly. We would walk over to the local rec center and play basketball. We'd run around down by the creek, play fighting with plastic weapons Benny got us. Once Jeff was old enough to drive, we would sometimes go to the movies or to Town East Mall, and pretty regularly Grandma would plan an excursion for us to a water park, an exhibit, or just to play tennis. Within that unit, I was the youngest, 6 months under Chris and more than 4 years younger than Jeff, not to mention the shortest and least athletic. When you're a kid, those things matter a lot, and yet I never remember that being held against me. I was always welcome to come along, and they always waited for me to catch up whenever I fell behind. I was welcomed for what I could do and treated it as if my ideas and contributions mattered. And as the oldest and frankly the coolest, no offense to Don or Chris, Jeff took the lead in setting that tone. Even as a kid, he had an open heart and an open mind. I admit that I idolized him a bit as a young child. After all, what 8-year-old boy wouldn't idolize an athletic middle schooler who treated you like you belonged and who listened to you? As we became adults, that love and openness never went away. Jeff was one of these people that might go several years without seeing, and yet when we would get together, it felt like restarting a conversation right where it left off. We led different lives in different places, but when we were together, none of that mattered. We could just talk and be ourselves. But of all those conversations and memories, 2 incidents in particular really stand out to me. The first was when Jeff and Michelle came and visited Sarah and I in Boston. They came in the middle of a heat wave. It wasn't hot by Texas standards, of course, but keep in mind that Boston is a city with high humidity and not a lot of good air conditioning. And yet Jeff and Michelle took it all in stride. Most days, Jeff and Michelle would go out and do various tourist activities, just the 2 of them, then come back in the evening to gush about how good a time they had. But clearly, the highlight of the trip was when the 4 of us went to Fenway Park. Jeff was like a kid in a candy store. Before the game, he saw a sign advertising that you could pre-purchase an actual base that was to be used during the game. And so after the last out, we went to the shop, picked it up, carried home a very well-used first base. He was afraid that it would get wet or the dirt would get wiped off. It was clearly better if it still had the cleat marks on it, but somehow he managed to get it back to Tyler in good condition. And every time I saw him afterwards, he always talked about it like it was a centerpiece of his sports memorabilia collection. The second event that really stands out to me happened not long after my mother passed away. It fell to me to execute my mom's will and to take the lead in cleaning out her house. I sorted through decades worth of possessions to find the small percentage that John and I or other family members would want to keep. One day Jeff drove in from Tyler to help me go through it all. So I gave him a tour of my little operation, explained my process to him, and sent him into the garage while I went back to my nest in the living room. A while later, I heard a loud exclamation coming from the garage. I walked over to see Jeff holding a sword, an actual steel longsword. See, my mom had once worked for a Dallas nonprofit that helped the mentally ill, and someone in that community had left a sword there, but never returned to claim it. My mother had found it in a closet, at which point it was just a safety hazard, and volunteered to find a way to safely dispose of it. Unfortunately, she was laid off not long afterwards, which was followed by a series of illnesses. The sword ended up lost and forgotten in her garage. Forgotten, that is, until Jeff dug it out again. He kept offering to pay me for it, which I really didn't need or want at that time, so I told him he could keep it in exchange for helping me for the day. He thought he had won the lottery. I remember him calling Michelle and having what sounded to me like a rather awkward conversation about bringing it home. And sure enough, when he left that night, he drove back to Tyler accompanied by a sword. He got a cool weapon. I didn't have to deal with trying to figure out how to properly dispose of it, and we both had a good laugh at a time when I really needed one. I will forever be grateful for that last part in particular. Rest in peace, my cousin. Love, Mike. Yeah, thank you, Mike. While I'm up here and thanking Mike, who's not here, Chris is recording today's service, and it's live streaming on YouTube. I don't know if people knew that ahead of time or not, but Chris has promised me that it will remain in the archives, and so it will be available if you want to spread the word to anybody who couldn't be here today and that wants to watch it. So, okay. Yes, that would be great. Yes. I was going to read it off my phone, but I'd much rather you read it. tell everybody who.
I'm Janet Ingram. I'm Jeff's mom. And my sister's two sons, that was Mike, her youngest son, and Robert, her husband. And this, John sent me this just a little bit before, well, actually, I think we were on the way up here. He said it comes a bit late, but something I thought I'd share. And John was real close to, like Mike, their cousins, with Jeff and well, Chris and all the others. Okay, this is from John. The thing I will always remember about Jeff is his laughter, the way he would tighten the muscles in his face at first, almost like he was trying to hold the laughter inside and not let it out. He would snicker like he was fighting back the giggles and laughter as long as he could. It always makes me smile when I reminisce about the time we spent together. My son, Ollie, has always looked forward to our trips to Tyler the past few years to visit Cousin Jeff to play Frisbee, catch, or just be goofy in the park. We will miss him dearly, but Jeff's laughter makes me smile every time I think about it, and it is a memory I will hold dear for the rest of my life. Thank you.
Yeah, I'm going to ask you to do that again in just a second. But I just have to say, parents aren't supposed to see their children die before them. And so I want them to applaud again as a way to thank you two for producing such a great kid and a great man. So
Thank you. Michelle. And I just want to say this about our daughter-in-law. Each time we moved to a different place, my husband's been in the teacher coaching business and administration with principal. And every time we moved somewhere, God led our children to meet their spouse. And Jeff went to college and met a wife. And she has just been a rock, and we're so thankful for each one of our daughter-in-laws and our son-in-laws. And we're just so blessed to have Michelle, and she was always there by Jeff's side, and we love her dearly, and we want her to know that she's loved. Thank y'all.
Well, this whole time I've thought, there's no way I'm going to get up. But all of you know me, and I can't resist a microphone. I just can't. It's just, yes. So, no, I promise I won't sing. I'm not talented like Jerron. Stephen and I met because of my singing. We'll go with that. I'm a karaokeer. I always said I really can't sing. I'm just an entertainer. So, and it just warms my heart to hear all the great things about Jeff today. I mean, I know he's a great man. I've always known it. I knew it from the day that I met him. And I was laughing and telling some people earlier, you know, I'm 52, and my birthday's in September, and Jeff's a July birthday. He actually graduated high school a year behind me. But because of the way our birthdays fell, you know, he's almost 2 years younger than me, almost. But when we met in a class in school, we met in an educational psychology class, which I thought was funny. I mean, it is now, but because he wanted to be a coach, so that's how we met. And I remember, you know, we started talking, and I asked him, I'm like, so how old are you? And he said, 18. And I was like, oh, no, really, how old are you? You know, because I was like, oh, you're way too young. You know, no, I can't do that. So, but yeah, he was 18 at the time, so that was pretty funny. And he, we finally, at the end of that semester, we wound up meeting at a friend's party because we realized that we had a mutual friend. And so I asked Jeff, I was like, why didn't you ask me out before that? And he said, because, Michelle, if it didn't work out, we'd have had to been in that class together the rest of the semester. It's like, of course, you know. That's a very Jeff answer. So we were glad it worked out. But like I said, I'm just so excited to see all of you here. Jeff and I have just built so many families everywhere that we've lived because we've moved around. We were in Silver Springs. We moved here to Tyler. He got moved to the Lindale store and drove for a year from Silver Springs to Lindale, and he finally told me, he said, Michelle, I can't do that anymore. He said, that's like an hour every day, one way. He said, we've got to move. So that's how we came to Tyler and met so many people here, and we have some friends here. And he wanted to tell a story today about our Thanksgiving that we had one Thanksgiving. Where are you at? Chance and Chelsea, where are y'all? Are y'all still here? Yeah. So y'all stand up for a moment. I know Chance wanted to tell the story, but he's kind of sick, so he's like, yeah. So we knew him from Buffalo Wild Wings. I mean, if you've been to our Boo Bash, we always laughed because people would go around, it's like, how do you know Jeff and Michelle? Buffalo Wild Wings. How do you know Jeff and Michelle? Buffalo Wild Wings. Jeff and I spent a lot of time there. And we were there. Chance was a bartender, and I remember him telling us that he couldn't spend that Thanksgiving with his family for whatever reason. And so Jeff was like, hey, no problem. We're going to be at the house on Thanksgiving. We'll cook a Thanksgiving dinner. And I was thinking, oh my gosh, we've never cooked turkey dressing. But okay, we're going to do Thanksgiving. And so our cousin, Leanne, she shared a dressing recipe with us that you're going to think that's crazy. It's a crock pot dressing that was so incredibly good. But anyway, so we went with that, and we just did the whole meal, and it was fantastic. And we did that several times. It was like, okay, if you don't have somewhere to go on a holiday, come to our house. We're the spot to hang out, which is kind of how our Boo Bash just started, too. Our original Boo Bash only had, yes, Amber was there. There were, 6 of us? A couple of years ago, Jeff lost count at like 40 or 50 people. So Boo Bashes grew pretty big. So if you missed a Boo Bash, I'm sorry, because they were fantastic. But anyway, I want to thank everybody, for coming, for supporting me, for remembering Jeff. And just please hold on to those memories and keep sharing them with me. If you have pictures to share, send them to me, please. But thank you all.
I'm not sure if I can do this or not, but I know we've talked a lot about Jeff, but I want to talk about you, Michelle. Nothing bad this time. But first of all, but of course we met at Buffalo Wild Wings as well. And Mama, she didn't have one beer. She had 4 or 5. But Michelle, as you remember when I stopped by the week before Jeff passed away and asked if I could have a moment alone with him. As I told you, I would share things over time when the timing was right. When Jeff was in the hospital, I shared a lot of those memories with you as you held his hand those last moments that night at 12:13. I'll never forget that moment. You handled it well. His parents handled it well. I hated to have to call them that evening. But as I told you, there's one thing that I've held back from you that day, something I felt needed the right timing to approach. Before I left that day, I asked Jeff one last question. Jeff, when this is all over, what would you want Michelle to know? A single tear rolled down his right cheek. And he answered, I couldn't have asked for a better wife. She did everything she could for me, taking me to my appointments, making sure I had my medicine, and fed me properly, and did everything possible for me. I appreciated everything Michelle did for me. And then the final words for you, Michelle, that he told me when I left the room is, I love you, Michelle. Thank you.
There's a lot of us But if you want to share something, we want to hear it. Chris, we don't have to be out by a certain time, do we? Okay, good. Chris is going to stay here all night long so we can all share our stories. All right. Okay, all the friends who met Jeff and Michelle at Buffalo Wild Wings, stand up. Come on up.
My name's Randy Ingram. I'm Jeff and Michelle's uncle, one of them. Like most people, I'm not sure if I'm going to get through this or not. Start with a serious one first. As Brian said, Jeff moved to Mom and Dad's right after he graduated from high school. I guess it was probably about a year, 2 years after that, that our dad had his first stroke. And I know what a strength to my mom that Jeff was. He would literally pick up my dad and take him to his room. As we've all talked about, that was the kind of man Jeff was. And every time we could, that we saw Jeff and Michelle, and you're right, as somebody else said, after that time, it was always Jeff and Michelle, or Michelle and Jeff. And never heard, once this started, I never heard him once complain. The times we saw them in Dallas or at Corliss, my sister, his aunts, because she would guilt them into come visiting when my husband and I were in town. And we would all sit around the table and laugh and make jokes and just have a great time together. And that's part of what made a family. And thank you, Michelle, for joining our crazy family and making it even crazier sometimes. But for everything that you did for Jeff, everything that you've done for us, for Bud and I, thank you. And you know that we're always there for you.
That's it. I give you all night long, and we just have one more person share. We were fortunate enough to see Jeff for our last time when we came to visit at Christmas. And he wasn't in good enough shape, and they didn't have the time to, come to one of our girls' houses. But Michelle said, we're going to be at UT Southwest for a treatment, and we can visit with you in the waiting room there. So we made it. I'm so glad we did. Like I say, so strong through the whole thing, Jeff was. Even though you could, all the weight he lost and everything, and with the trach, and it was hard for him to speak, he just still had a positive attitude. And we shared stories there in the waiting room for just a few minutes, and he was so wise. He had insights into what I'm going through in Minnesota, and had words of wisdom to share with us, and an upbeat attitude, and just he's the one who needs the encouragement and the strength, and he was giving us encouragement and strength. So it was great. Oh, good. Here comes somebody else. I know you're tired of hearing me, so. Come on up and introduce yourself.
Hi, my name is Beatrice Valdez. I feel like if I didn't come here, I regret it. So I met Jeff through Michelle, of course. I was in the 6th grade, and Michelle was my librarian, and she knew my mother from Corridas. So she's like, oh, I know you, blah, blah. And after that, it was just a friendship that my mom and Michelle had. And they would invite us to dinners, and we would just hang out. And Jeff, like I said, was the biggest nerd. And I loved it because I'm a big nerd as well. So he would show us his collection of his comic books. And I wasn't big into sports, but he would just show us his comic books, Spider-Man. My little brother's a big Spider-Man fan. But it just felt like he was, because my mom's a single mother of 5 kids. So it felt like a father figure that was there that would help us and take care of us. And he also hanged out a lot with my younger brother, which sadly can't be here, but he was the closest to Jeff. And he would go spend a night with them. We would have movie nights at their house. And when he found out I was in golf, he would teach me how to hit the golf ball correctly. Because once he found out he was excited, he'd bring out his golf thingies. I can't remember them. And he'd be like, this is how you use the drive, and this is how you do this. And it was just nice to have a male figure in our life that loved us. So, yeah, so he was like a dad to us. He's one of our best friends, and I even loved it when my kids were born. He was excited to meet my daughter because he wanted kids, but they decided not to, so he was excited to hold her. When he met my husband, he was very respectful, and we had one moment together separate when he was grilling, and he's like, are you happy? And I said, yes. He's like, does he treat you right? I said, yes. He goes, then that's all you need. So I was like, okay, but thank you for sharing Jeff with me. And, you know, it's, like I said, a father that I never had, so he'll always be there for us. Yeah.
All right, who else is going to regret it if you don't come share something because you know something about Jeff that we don't know? Donna, I think you need to come share a little bit about your son. Donna Wanabana Hana, love of my life, apple of my eye, favorite sparring partner, mother of my beautiful babies. She's also known as Dr. Donna Pettit, so I'm a little bit proud of her.
After I got to know Jeff through Buffalo Wild Wings, it was obvious that Stephen and Michelle were definitely kindred spirits, and it was obvious that Jeff and I were far more kindred, much more temperaments. And one day we were sitting all around the house, and he said, you know, Donnie, he said, I think you're going to be my second mom. And I said, well, Jeff, I had you awful young, but you're the best oldest son I've ever had. So after we decided that, Shay, who came up a little bit earlier, he said, yep, Jeff's the best big brother I've ever had, too. When these two would go on train trips, and Jeff and I would say, go, have fun. We would play golf. We would hang out. We would just have marvelous times together. Didn't want to hear about their trips. We would go pick them up at the end, put them into bed. That was kind of the end. I'm going to miss him so much, Michelle. Thank you.
All right, if you're sure. Oh, we all, not all. A lot of us met at BWW. Last call. Oh, good. I've got some takers.
You said BW3s, so I had to come up here. Yeah, so we, like a lot of people in here, know Jeff and Michelle through Buffalo Wild Wings. And we were always at the Boo Bash. 8 or 9 Boo Bashes for us, which we met Jeff and Michelle really young. So they were like our parents. They've watched us get married. Michelle did karaoke at my wedding. It was fabulous. But we would go over and do a lot of game nights. And Jeff won most of the time. So
he was always so humble and, so gracious. Jeff, you were always a better person after talking to Jeff. He was an inspiration. He's just a rock solid guy, and probably the only person that I ever met that was a bigger comic book nerd than me. And he was ecstatic whenever he found out that I was naming my son after Robin. So he would always have me a new Batman comic book every time we go over there, or some signed memorabilia, and that's something that I'll cherish for the rest of my life. We connected on that, and he was just awesome, and he will be missed. And Michelle, if you ever need anything, we're right down the road at all times, okay?
thank you.
No, I think we need another song.
I think so.
Just to kind of lift everybody up. Jeff was such a light in this world, and even though he's not with us, I believe he's going to continue to be a light in each and every one of our hearts. And I just want us all to join in with this song. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. Oh, this little light of mine. If you know it, come on. I'm gonna let it shine. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. Let it shine, let it shine, let it shine. Oh, everywhere I go, I'm gonna let it shine, yeah, everywhere I go. I'm gonna let it shine. I said everywhere I go, I'm gonna let it shine, let it shine, let it shine, let it shine. The last one I want to say is, all in my heart, I'm gonna let it shine. Oh, all in my heart, I'm gonna let it shine. All in my heart, I'm gonna let it shine. Let it shine, let it shine, let it shine.
Amen, Jerron. You read my mind, or the Spirit was talking to me and you at the same time, right? At the bottom of your program, if you got one, it has John 14:27, and I'd like to read verses 27 and 28 to you. Peace I leave with you, my peace I give to you. Not as the world gives do I give to you. Let not your hearts be troubled, neither let it be afraid. You have heard me say to you, I am going away and coming back to you. If you loved me, you would rejoice because I said, I am going to the Father, for my Father is greater than I am. John Klein is going to come lead us in a closing prayer, and then hopefully you'll stay around and share more stories with each other. Thank you for sharing today.
If you would bow your heads with us. Dear Lord, we're gathered here today with heavy hearts, mourning our loss. We're filled with sorrow and disbelief that Jeff's life was cut so short by this disease. But we thank you for the memories that we've shared here, and we will cherish them for the joy he brought to everyone he was around. We ask for your comfort and strength for Michelle, his family, his friends during this difficult time. Embrace us in your love and help us to find peace in the midst of our grief. Help us lean on each other and find comfort in the memories we hold dear. We know that Jeff's spirit lives on, and we trust that he is now in your loving embrace, free from pain and suffering. Help us to remember the preciousness of life and to live each day to the fullest, just as Jeff did. Help us to appreciate the time that we have with our loved ones and to cherish the moments we share. We ask all this in your holy name. Amen.